Femi, okay. In this episode of The Stream, we take a look at the divisions in the Republican Party in the United States and ask where the GOP is headed. Have a look here on my laptop at this recent poll. If Donald Trump were to start a new political party, such as the MAGA Party or the Patriot Party, how likely would you be to join? This question was asked to GOP voters. 64% said that they would. They would join a new party. I am fascinated by you weighing in on this conversation as well. Whatever side of the aisle you may well fall on, or if you have no political party that you are behind, jump into the comments section. Love to have you be part of today's show.
And when you have a poll coming out yesterday that 64% of Republicans are willing to follow Trump to a new party, I think what we're seeing is genuinely an opportunity for some of those true Republicans, the Adam Kersingers, the Ben Sasses of the world, to really make a move, a moral decision. Is it time for the Republicans to take back their party and allow the Trumpists or the American fascists to exit? Or is it eventually, as we're probably going to see, the death of the GOP as we know it? And I think that in itself is more existential than it is any form of civil war where you get reconciliation as the outcome.
So much to unpack. Jeffrey, Jean, and Rena, it's really nice to have you. I'm going to get you to say hello to our international audience and explain who you are and what you do. Hi there, Jeff. Welcome to the stream. What do you do? Why are you important in this conversation?
I'm not going to claim a lot of importance for myself, but my name is Jeff Cabaservice, and I'm the Director of Political Studies at the Niskanen Center, which is a center-right think tank in Washington, D.C. I'm author of A History of the Republican Party and a columnist for the Guardian newspaper, and this technically is my second time on the stream because I was on it not too long after Waj Ali started it up about 6-7 years ago.
Welcome back. Thank you for coming back to us. Hello there, Jean. Nice to see you. Can you unpack what you do for our international audience and who you are?
Sure, it's great to be here. I'm Jean Card. I'm a Republican consultant. I specialize in communications. I actually was a speechwriter for several cabinet members in the George W. Bush administration. Today I host a podcast called Bipartisan. It's bipartisan podcast. And I'm also a co-chair of the Right Now Women PAC, which supports Republican women running for Congress.
Nice to have you. And Rena Shah, welcome back to the stream. Remind our audience who you are and what you do.
Hi, Femi. I'm a former Republican strategist. I spent just the past 10 years working on congressional campaigns all across the country for Republicans. Prior to that, I was an aide to 2 members of the U.S. House of Representatives, both Republicans. Most recently, I was the founder of Republican Women for Biden, and nowadays I am doing more political consulting as well as serving on the board of Republican Women for Progress.
Okay, guess I'm going to refer to you as Republican whisperers. So, Jeff, help us off first of all. What would be an example of a division in the Republican Party that you can see right now?
Well, thanks for the question. The most obvious division in the Republican Party right now that we're all seeing is the question as to whether Donald Trump won or lost the 2020 presidential election. And this is a real dividing line, and evidence from the polls suggests that more than half of Republicans at least claim to believe that Donald Trump actually won in a landslide.
Jean, what would be your division?
Yeah, Jeff, what Jeff said, he took the words right out of my mouth. I think that's the most clear division right now. And of course, it relates to other things. If you believe that Trump won the election, then you believe that the insurgency at the Capitol on January 6th was at least somewhat justified, et cetera, et cetera. You know, if you believe that Trump won the election, you believe that he should not be tried in the Senate. I mean, it all ties together with that. Jeff, I correctly identified the essential break.
Yeah. Rena, do you agree? Is that the essential break? Is there anything else that you would point to that divides the Republican Party right now that is so significant that you would want to throw it up right at the top of our conversation?
I would say there's a big distinction between those who believe that Democrats are bad and those who believe that Democrats are worth forming some coalitions with here and there. So that's what I really believe we should think about in this next step. I mean, as a Republican Party, what we've seen, and I've been a part of this in many ways on Capitol Hill, are these conversations are just how bad the Democrats are, how they're going to threaten the American way, how they want to take us to being Venezuela, for example. That's the stuff that I believe we've got to start the conversation with, because that's what I believe really led a lot of people to click for Trump again in 2020, even though they didn't like his behavior.
And Femi, can I just endorse Rena's point of view there? I think there is a real division between Republicans who want to govern, who actually believe that they are capable of advancing policies through the democratic process and negotiating with Democrats to get them passed, and then other Republicans who simply want to perform their outrage against Democrats and make the case to the public that Democrats are evil and shouldn't be trusted with any power, and therefore maybe even their voters need to be suppressed.
And Femi, I would actually love to add to what both of my colleagues have said here. I'd say that and Jeff has well described the division in the elected Republican officials, but think about Republican voters. I think there's a real division among Republican voters along the lines of class and culture, that we have a working class and an elite class. And this is talked about a lot in American politics at large, but it's also true within the Republican Party that there are class divisions.
How is this all being able to be held together, or are we about to see an implosion right now? Because one of the things that I've noticed from the Republican Party over the years of living in the United States is that it is really good at saying we are doing this all together, and whatever they want in terms of lawmaking, they stick together. Is this going to be one of the times where this doesn't happen? Jeff, you start.
You know, the Republican Party historically had been a coalition of very different interest groups. And what you've seen in the last several decades is the Republican Party becoming redefined as an ideological group. And the Republican Party is united. It's largely because they forced people who didn't agree with their ideology to walk the plank, and either to become independents or Democrats. And what the Republican Party needs to get back to being is actually a coalition that can disagree internally, that can uphold different points of view and yet still partake in the democratic process.
Rena, I remember you saying that you were never Trumper back in, oh my goodness, when was this? 2016. So did you literally walk the plank, not literally, walk the plank and then come off the edge to the other side?
Well, in many ways, I was made to walk the plank, literally. I suffered the repercussions of speaking out, being the first elected delegate to the Republican National Convention of 2016 to go against then presumptive nominee Trump. So I got to see exactly what this was about. This was about uniting behind one person. So I saw the cult of personality start to form back then. And that was troublesome and worrisome to me. But speaking from my Hill experience for a moment, this act of governing, and I want to pick up a little bit on what Jeff just said, is that it seems to me the Republican Party in recent years has had so little interest in governing. And what we saw with President Trump was not just an inability to govern because he didn't quite understand, he was new to it, but a fundamental, he just didn't seem to want to. That's the thing. He had no interest, a fundamental lack of interest in governing. So that is what I really worry about. The Republican Party was long dubbed the party of no. And that was not just troublesome for the future, for those of us who've really wanted solutions, have been tired of things being just the way they are, and have wanted to push back on the status quo. That's not traditionally, ideologically, something you find in the Republican Party. But in the younger set, in millennials like me, the frustration of just saying no to everything and not really messaging our ideas better was something that I felt had to change. And I wanted to be a part of that change. So I started joining outside groups similar to Right Now Women PAC, which I was proudly on the board of for more than a couple of years. And I'm so glad Gina's co-chairing there, because it was outside groups like Right Now Women Political Action Committee that was doing the work of putting the pressure, I believe, on elected officials who were Republicans to say, let's come up with something different. Let's message differently. Let's pay attention to groups like women, even younger women who traditionally were moving away from the Republican Party. None of those problems seem to have been solved, or there's no interest right now in the era of Trump and even now to want to still solve those problems.
Yes, I have a couple of questions to you from our YouTube audience. So let me put this one to Jean. Trump was the best thing to happen to America and the GOP. Obviously, that is an opinion. But could you break down, Jean, anything that was positive that President Trump brought to the Republican Party?
Sure. I mean, and that's an important perspective. And Trump revealed, I think might be a better word. He revealed some very important things that Republicans needed to be aware of. There were, millions of people who felt ignored, not just by the political system writ large, but by their own party. They felt belittled by liberal elites, but also by conservative elites. And Trump woke up those people and said, I care about you. I hear you. You have a voice now. And the voice is very loud, and it had been silent too long. So I think that's very important in any future Republican leaders who are going to be successful. And by successful, I mean bring together a coalition of Republicans and keep the party intact. That would be the new definition of a successful Republican leader. Those leaders will have to speak to and listen to this segment of the party that felt so ignored and so mistreated for so long.
Jeff, I was trying to wrestle with how would you define Trumpism, and then I found a little clip, and this is from Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she said this on February the 5th. And I feel that there's this great admiration from former President Trump coming from her. And I'm wondering if this exactly here is Trumpism. Have a listen to her and then come off the back of this clip.
He was a president that didn't care about your skin color because God created us all equal, and thank God our Constitution affirms that. He was a president that wanted every single person to achieve, and that's why we supported him. That's why I've always supported him. And I want to tell you, Republican voters support him still. The party is his. It doesn't belong to anybody else.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, the recently elected congresswoman from Georgia, who was notoriously a QAnon fanatic and general nutcase, it's best to disbelieve almost everything that comes out of her mouth. Donald Trump very consciously campaigned and governed as a dividing figure. And he actually was really an alien force to the Republican Party, which, after all, was the party that won the American Civil War in the mid-19th century. It was the party of the Union. Donald Trump comes out of the tradition, really, of the defeated South, the tradition of populism, which aims to divide and inflame the population in that this act of dividing will leave the populist with the bigger half of the coalition. And Donald Trump certainly made it explicit that he governed in the interest of red states, that he didn't care about the blue states. However, having said that, populism is often the response to real problems. And the United States had, in fact, suffered from a number of somewhat ignored problems in the years leading up to Trump's election in 2016. In particular, globalization and automation and the especial premium put on jobs requiring college education meant that much of the country was really being left behind. And most of the prosperity that happened in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis really occurred in a few big metropolitan areas. And, although economic distress was not the sole explanation for the rise of Trumpism, it was one of the most important reasons.
Rena, I want to put this to you. This is Rosalyn Cooperman. And right now in the United States, there's a lot of news coverage around Marjorie Taylor Greene. But as a Republican strategist, I'm really curious whether you feel that the Republicans have a Marjorie Taylor Greene problem. This is Rosalyn. Come off the back of her comment.
The problem right now is the fact that one of the most visible people within their party, the standard bearer of their party, is a person who has embraced conspiracy theories, has made social media posts calling for the assassination of political rivals, and has harassed students who have survived a school shooting. And so long as that person remains one of the most visible faces of the Republican Party, it's going to be very difficult for them to be viewed as a palatable party, a credible party, and a successful party in those races that they need to win.
Well, Femi, what I really need to do is say what I think Trumpism is. And Trumpism is a cult of personality to me. It's focused on policies that Jeff just touched on. He said those policies fitted populist nationalist agenda. And it's certainly not a conservative agenda, which is rooted in classical liberalism. So I do see Trumpism splitting the party really in its current form, because with Marjorie Taylor Greene, this congresswoman who we just heard in the clip, she's a congresswoman from Georgia. She's in her mid-40s. But just the other day, she was removed in a bipartisan manner by her colleagues in the U.S. House of Representatives from all the committees she was appointed to. So she will not have any juice or power now. And also Congresswoman Liz Cheney, the number 3 Republican in the House, she's being supported. She's standing up and speaking out and pushing back against Trumpism. So there's a rumbling right now. And then you look at the Senate side, members like Senator Ben Sasse of Nebraska, who won with tens of thousands of more votes than Trump won his state with. You really look at this moment and you think that there's something happening. And I know there is, because there's this part of the electorate that's ready for truly conservative principles, and they're done with Trump. So that market can be tapped. It's just a matter of how. So this divide with Marjorie Taylor Greene, what I see is the highlight of the cultural divide, really, the city versus urban, the educated versus non-educated, and we can say college educated for that, and then white versus non-white. So a lot of whataboutism is happening in this moment. And look, the far left does it too. There just need to be adults right now in the room that are willing to say it doesn't matter what the other party does. It does not excuse Trump. And I see at least Congresswoman Liz Cheney doing that right now. So I am pleased to see it starting to happen.
So we have this impeachment trial going on right now, the second impeachment trial for President Trump. That's a piece of history right there, Jeffrey. But is it important history for Republicans?
I think the impeachment trial is an important turning point for the Republican Party. But I'm not expecting a lot from Republicans in terms of the number that will vote to convict Trump and remove him from any chance of holding public office again. And that's because most Republicans aren't very brave, and maybe you shouldn't expect them to be. I think there's a quote from Goethe that says, "Unhappy is the land with a need for heroes." It's very unusual for any party's members to vote against its own leader in an impeachment trial. But at the same time, I do think that the Republican Party needs to get past Trumpism and some of those toxic legacies that Rena talked about, the white nationalism, the push toward authoritarianism. It really has to separate itself fairly clearly from those. And in that sense, impeachment will be a missed chance for the Republican Party.
Sure. I'm going to push on because there will be life after former President Trump. We're living it right now. Olivia Rondeau is a conservative activist. She's a young conservative activist, and she thinks now is the time to be thinking about a different platform as a conservative. Here are her thoughts, and Gina, I'd love you to pick up off the back of Olivia.
So in my opinion, young Republicans need to embrace certain values such as America First priorities and more pro-liberty movements and ideas to even begin to salvage the Republican Party. We will not bring more people over if we don't support criminal justice reform, if we don't support marijuana legalization. There's many things that we need to change about the current Republican platform to even win an election ever again. So I really want to stress I'm not one of those people that believes that young Republicans need to go back to their roots and go back to traditional conservative values when the Republican Party traditionally is not very conservative or pro-liberty.
Well, I love what Olivia had to say personally. I think I'm largely in agreement with her, actually, and it's lovely to see this type of passion coming out of a young Republican. A lot of what's important about what Olivia just said is that the idea of returning essentially to policy and philosophy. I mean, right now, the Republican platform, literally the platform that was passed at the last convention was whatever Donald Trump wants is what the Republican Party will support. We got away, that was such a critical moment. We got away from policies and a grounding of philosophy. So I think Olivia is on something very important. I can't wait. And I hope this is part of the post-Trump era, which I'm grateful has already started, where we can have a discussion not about personality, not about a inflammatory and charismatic individual, but instead about issues and policies that actually impact people's lives.
Yikes. Jean, you know there are young people right now who don't know what that's like not to be talking about a big personality as a political leader in the United States. I love this thought from Mike V, and I'm going to give this one to you, Rena. The Republican Party lacks the ethnic or racial diversity necessary to survive the next 3 presidential cycles. The Democrats delivered a black woman as a VP. The Republicans have yet to reach that milestone. Rena.
This is a loaded question, Femi. It's a complex question. Just the boxes I check sort of speak to that. I'm under 40, and so being a daughter of immigrants from India and Uganda, how does opportunity really get talked about from the right anymore? It's so hard to talk about it because in a way, all you hear is that the left is playing identity politics. But in some sense, I know that numbers of people like me who look like me and sound like me are waning as well on the right. So there is this tension of how do you come to the middle and really fix the numbers problem within the party? Women, people under 40, people who are first generation like myself, and just generally people of color, whether you're talking about the BIPOC community. So it's a real question and a real concern that I just don't think party leaders have any bandwidth to focus on. I just don't see it happening in the next couple of years. I see a pushback more than anything else that really is rooted in hypocrisy, really trying to call out Kamala Harris, for example, for celebrating Kwanzaa, as well as Jewish traditions, as well as the things from her mother's homeland in India. This is disappointing to me because every moment spent on trite talk like that are moments at which I can't talk to my friends or people within my family about why voting Republican is important for the future, for our economic futures. I'm more fiscally conservative than I am anything else. And I don't think that's very much unlike most people with my family background. Our parents came here legally and followed the letter of the law because of the country's opportunity, fiscally primarily. And so if the Republican Party hopes to have any gains with us, it's got to be a total shift in communications. The messaging has to change. There has to be not just this, oh, we're big tent. That ship has come and it's sailed, because what we saw in 4 years is that there was no interest in being a big tent party. I really, really think this is going to be a problem for the Republicans leading up to the 2022 midterms. And my last statement there on that is that I think the Republicans need electoral losses to wake up and really see what has to change. I don't think it's in the aftermath of the Trump loss or even a potential conviction.
It's one thing to say that we are big tent. It's another thing to show it. Rena, would you agree? We can say it all day, but we have to show it.
Yeah, that's perfect.
But could I add something? Could I add something? I think that the actual results down ballot of the last election showed that there's actually real potential for the Republican Party to reinvent itself as a party of the working, which in the United States is multi-ethnic and multiracial. The party actually did much better than expected among groups like Hispanics in places like South Florida and South Texas, and even performed better among African-American males, for example. And the Democrats are actually becoming a party of the college-educated professional classes and have shown relatively little interest in class politics. And there is a possibility for the Republican Party, to become more of a positive force in politics again, aimed at policies that would better the interests of what's becoming its base.
I'm really glad you said that, because I've got a really amazing, enthusiastic young man who's a young conservative. And despite all of these divisions in the Republican Party, he's incredibly optimistic. This is Benjamin.
I hope the future GOP will embrace the values that inspired me to be a conservative activist. And those values are limited government, markets, fiscal responsibility, compassion, and also striving for a more perfect American dream. As we look towards the future, as a climate activist and as a conservative, I'm very hopeful that the conservative movement starts to lead on environmental challenges, not be the party of no on them, and really strive for the solutions that work for all Americans. That's what the Republican Party is all about, and that's what the Republican Party of the future should be.
We have only just got started in our conversation, but Jeff and Jean and Rena, you're always welcome back to the stream anytime. Viewers, thank you, YouTubers. Thank you for your questions. I really do appreciate them. Have a look here, back here on my laptop, and you can follow our Republican strategist or Republican historian. We've got Jeff here on Twitter. Gene Card, at Gene Card. That's easy to find. And at Arena in DC is how you find Rena Shah. You can follow all three of our guests on Twitter, and of course, the AJ Stream, at AJ Stream. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.